Hi, I'm Liz.
And I'm Rhea.
Welcome to Karma's My Bitch, a podcast about love,
sex,
connection,
abundance,
joy,
purpose,
peace,
and how life isn't simply the stories we tell ourselves.
To me, It Can Always Be Better is very much a you statement, because ever since Karmic Affair, you've talked about everything getting better and more. And when we are living from that place of we want more, we want more, we want more, we know that we're in our fate, because fate brings us to the more.
It can just get better and better. Mm-hmm. I find it sometimes a bit scary and nerve-wracking to really be happy, because I worry what comes next. It'll be taken away, right? It's normal. But the idea that things could get better and better as we have more experiences is a really beautiful, hopeful, and exciting place to be.
So we have in prior episodes of this season talked about the intersection of magic and fate, and apparently we're not finished talking about that.
But I really liked it, because it really reminded me that actually all these things, like all the relationships that we have and all these purposeless things that we have and everything that lasts more than a moment is not magic, it's fate, which means it's written, which means it's not about our power, as it were, like magicking things, but it's just about our path. Yes. But I did wonder, how does it really work? If everything's laid out in our fates and there's this unfolding, how does it work?
It's one of the reasons we have to focus a bit on magic again is the younger generations, which I know you care and you don't care, right? You're kind of like, whatever. If it's not to do with me, then I kind of don't care.
I mean, at least I know who I am.
We're not just here. Our generations, millennials, a little less so, but you guys, I mean, we're not even going to go into like what millennials did and didn't do for this evolutionary like consciousness lift and leap and shift, okay? But our job was generally to kind of help lay groundwork for future generations to really start the whole 5D oneness consciousness world building concept, because we're all here for this consciousness game. These young generations that are coming in are very magical beings, which means vibrationally they are very different from us. They're different from me, they're different from you, they're even different from the older Gen Zers. If we are going to be able to continue to assist them, we really have to understand where they're coming from and what they're capable of. And we can't do that if our consciousness cannot reach magic. So one of the reasons why we have to be doing this is because we really have to start to bridge that dissonance. Because we have all that separation wiring in us. If we continue to keep that wiring in, it's as if we're all going to be living in very separate worlds. And we're going to keep wondering why everything's so different. And yes, we do need to be protective over these children, but not in the way in which, oh, the big bad people are going to come and scientists are going to abduct them so they can study their brains. It's really just because vibrationally they are just so different from us that if we cannot have the consciousness to support them, they're just going to really seem like the outliers when we are really the ones who are outliers. Now, these children, whatever you want to call them, this is the last chapter of adventure, it does not matter. What makes them magical is that their vibration, this is why we had to do ascension first, is so high. And not high as in scale, like, right? They're outside. But they vibrate at a frequency so beyond us that to be able to operate in this world, they're effectively just infusing our world with their energy. So with every in-breath and out-breath, they're just like fairies sprinkling dust around. And the reason why we may not be able to experience it is because we have been trying to siphon them through a very narrow separation filter. Like, you need to go to this school. These are the things you need to learn. So we've erased a lot of that magic. We've taken a lot of that out of them. Or our own consciousness is just so dense that we can't even recognize what it is. So magic is the cherry on top. It's the Tuscan holiday as opposed to the backyard one, right? It's the fullest actualization of our desires, or in the other definition that we gave the other day, where all is possible is the true definition of magic. Magic is the fullest actualization of our desires. It's the fullest divine in action. Magic, in many ways, is us living our fate.
Because we're the divine in action in the fullest way possible.
Exactly. So if living our fate, especially the unwritten part, because we've said that there's a fate tapestry, but there does get to a part where we have gone beyond everything we've already written, and we go into the part where we get to create it all. And it takes a lot and a long time for a lot of people to get there. Some people don't make it. But if you've been on this path for quite some time, you will likely get there. So if the unwritten part is also us being the divine on this earth plane, magicking our lives is very much part of our fate. Ta-da! That is the intersection of fate and magic.
That's very cool. That's very cool.
It's tricky to operate from an unwritten part if there's other parts that are written.
What about the relationships then? Because of fate and relationships, and how does that work? Mm-hmm. Dun, dun, dun.
Yeah. So remember, and you might know, or you might remember this season, because it was a couple seasons ago, I want to say, we talked about how fates can overlap.
Yeah, like fates, like kind of, they overlap when you're like in partnership or in relationship.
So in relationships, so the fate tapestry, I got to bring back that visual. So you have a big tapestry, that is your fate. Now, in relationships, compatibility is determined by vibration. So for that vibration to be able to work and be a part of, effectively you're looking at an ever-evolving relationship. Because if you imagine in your fate, you reach a juncture, a point in which you meet somebody, you have to be able to continue to grow and evolve, and that person's in your life. Mm-hmm. So it's never just one point. Otherwise, it would be something for 10 minutes and be over, right? Which is fine, because we did talk about how you can be in love for 24 hours and move on.
Yeah, that's an eternity.
Yes, exactly. I always did like that episode. So you have the ever-evolving relationship. You have your own soul's evolution as well, right? Which is why this tapestry is so vast. Your fates must overlap in order for that connection to be made. As in, one tapestry is overlaid another, but they cannot touch.
What does that mean?
As in, you cannot lay one tapestry directly on top of another. You are not joined with a person.
They operate in parallel.
No, they cannot operate necessarily in parallel. One is just over the other when you are in relationship. So that way, your points on your fate, like where you might meet and stuff, that's where your fates will intersect. So you can continue together for however long. When you say parallel, you're almost implying that they're side by side. And they're not. They're on top.
But what is the difference? I don't understand this on top business.
The threads of the tapestry cannot possibly touch. Picture this for a moment.
Okay. Remember, we're on a podcast and no one can see your hands.
I know, but I'm giving it to you so then you can help explain. Shut the fuck. I understand that.
So Liz has her hands on top of each other. Go on. No, it's important. Go on. I meant genuinely, this is important. So it cannot touch. But I don't understand I don't understand the point of that bit, but cool. We'll keep going.
Well, because we have this idea that the moment we meet somebody or we're in a relationship, suddenly all the threads get woven together because our lives are then together.
Yeah, true.
But it can't work that way.
You just work in tandem. Tandem? Is tandem a word we'd like to use?
Yeah. You can say tandem.
Okay.
That's fine.
Complementary fates.
Effectively, the term would be in conjunction with.
Okay. Interesting.
Our tapestry is not woven in such a way to include another's because we are our own person. We are the divine. We have our own quirks. We have our own course of life. And so we have to be able to operate independently and to be able to achieve our primary directive, which is to grow and evolve. Mm-hmm. So must another person. But in order for us to come together, are the threads of the fate in which we might meet, they have to be able to come together yet not touch.
Okay.
Yeah.
Hover near each other.
Exactly. Hover. So it's as if those threads touch, but they're not because it's our coding. That's why we had to do the physical episode before this. Once our coding is in place and that person's coding is expressed, that's how we can come together as if our fates are aligned. Are we good?
I'm still so confused. What do you mean?
What do you mean? What do I mean? You did have an issue in the that one episode where I talked about fates overlapping and shit. You're like, cool, that's so nice, whatever. And now I'm like, okay.
They can't touch because your fate is your own.
Mm-hmm. Yes.
However, they can hover near each other enough, close enough that you can meet. But when you meet, you're still your own person. They're still their own person. So it's not like you become one person. So that's
Correct.
why they don't touch.
Yes.
Yeah. Okay.
Yes.
Get that much.
Yes.
You lost me at coding and expressing coding.
So if you can imagine that.
I'm trying hard to imagine.
And I really appreciate your
hard.
efforts. I really feel like I should have done these. We talked about the physical body. We also talked about the other bodies you can't necessarily see, but know they're there. We operate mental body, emotional body, spiritual body, but our physical body is the one that we know.
Yes.
Because we can see it. We can feel
Yes.
it all the time.
Yes.
And we have a lot of other bodies we talk about. Not really. But we're a set of, we're a very complicated ecosystem to make all of this work. Yeah? Mm. And when you consider that our fates contain in them our entire life path, so we're taking all of our bodies on this one big adventure.
Yeah.
And in that adventure includes other people.
Yes.
And so how do we do this? How do we ensure that we get all the right people into our lives when we need them, either to teach us something, show us something, experience something? How does all of that work when you have choices?
I don't know.
As well. And you have a level of will and options. So we kind of, some people will dispute the idea of free will because we have fate or destiny. Destiny is when you're in your karma, and outside of that, you have fate. Therefore, all the options and choices we think we have, we really don't have as many because things are being dictated by our fate.
Yeah.
But because we wrote our fate, it's still an expression of our free will.
Yes.
Yet, because we came in with a directive to grow and evolve, we are looking for very specific experiences, many of which we've outlined before we incarnated.
Yes.
But because everybody's got their own fates, to be able to get to that point where we can meet is actually like a set of circumstances that are almost magical.
Yes.
Seemingly magical, because how in the fuck else do you make something happen on this earth plane when there's just a lot of bullshit going on too?
I don't know. How?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, that's what I'm trying to explain.
Okay.
That for every person you encounter who is written in your fate, as in you are contracted for them. And we talked about contracts. You make these contracts before you're incarnated. And
Or
you're
during your time.
Or during your time. But a lot of what is in our fate, in the written part, is often pre-incarnation. But yes, you're not wrong. We definitely will make them as we go along. This person decided not to show up. Again, that's free will. Because the soul decided it need to go in another direction. But I still want this experience. Therefore, I need someone else who's going to partner with me for this. So we're looking for a host of circumstances. For example, for you and I to meet, I needed to be in London by a certain time. You also were at a certain juncture in your life. Maybe it was pretty obvious I was going to join the gym by me.
It definitely
You
wasn't
were
obvious I was.
Maybe less of a priority for you, but you somehow still showed up. It's funny how sometimes to be able to get to points in our fate, we might end up doing something a little out of character. Because maybe that's the only way in which you and I would have ever crossed paths. Because how else were you going to find me?
I mean, I could have come and tucked up for a session, maybe.
I really wasn't doing sessions.
Oh, so I was an exception.
Because at the time I was focused on other things. So our ability to cross paths was very, very narrow.
So was there other ways that were written that we could have met?
Good question. I don't think so. So poor you probably had to join the gym just to find me. At least,
But how
But we're
nice
not
is that?
It is very nice, because that's the other beauty about when you're overlying your fates like that, is the fact that you're not going to end up doing something that's somehow not beneficial to you. So it wasn't as if you were going to end up finding me somewhere else if you weren't going to get something out of it. Like, you know what I mean? It still had to be something that you were going to engage with. So when we talk about those threads being woven, as in you've got two fates that are overlaid, right?
Yeah.
One over the other. So that way, those junctures in which we would meet would line up. Now, when we talk about the coding, that coding exists within our physical body so that way we can meet. And that's how we can often sometimes say, wow, I have to know you and I don't know why.
Oh, wow, I just feel like I've known you forever.
No, not necessarily. That's past life stuff.
Oh.
But it's more the pull. I've got to know you and I just don't know why. I see you. My physical being is saying, I had that actually with one of my dear friends. I looked over at her first time I met her and I thought, I have to know you. And I felt that. I felt that all throughout my chest.
So our fates are also written on our bodies.
Mm-hmm. Very much.
Okay.
Very
That's
much.
what
Otherwise,
coding
how
means.
else are we going to find each other? Yeah, the coding's going to exist in all,
And so does
throughout
that
all
mean
the
that, like-
bodies. And there's usually only 2 to 3 possible ways in which two souls will find each other.
So what happens if you miss all those 2-3 possible ways?
No, you can always keep creating them. Their circumstances will somehow exist. So even if, for instance, like maybe you and I would have met a different year. So the nature of that relationship, okay, back to the visual, my hands are one above the other. The threads for that relationship are just going to mirror how we progress through our fates together. So our
Okay.
fates remain, and I said this in the previous episode about fate as well. Our fates remain overlaid as long as we're in each other's lives.
So my fate is overlaid by a fuck ton of different people's fates.
Mm-hmm. Yes, but that is how we know that we are connected to the all, Rhea. That is what is so fucking amazing about fate. That is what is so fucking amazing about this consciousness and this divine consciousness is when you realize that. That is our fullest connection. It's fucking fantastic.
So like, let's say I'm in a
a lot.
relationship with someone and I'm in a relationship with someone and their fates are overlaid with other people because of other relationships they have. And my fate's overlaid with theirs. Therefore, my fate's kind of overlaid with all these randos.
No, not necessarily. It might be a portion of it. But you do not have the coding that they would have with that person. So you don't have that connection necessarily. So when I say that you're connected or that we're connected to the all, it's not quite the same as like, oh, these contracted relationships.
No, what I'm saying is that technically my fate will touch every single person's fate in this whole entire world.
Yes. Yes.
Okay. All right, I'm with you. But my coding is what allows me to have the connection with someone specific. Yes. I got there. We got there. Yes. We got there.
In 30 minutes.
We got there. Okay, so.
Now, magic is a vibrational concept. I will not explain that further here. There's just no point.
Okay.
And since our connection to all things in our lives is a matter of vibration.
We feel or we don't.
Yes. We can vibrate at the same level as someone else in our fate, but not necessarily.
Okay.
If you think about it, when we met, we were in very two different sort of planes of consciousness. We were. I'm not saying mine was better than yours. We were just in two different planes of consciousness.
No, I'm teasing you. You're right, but I'm just like, ouch. But fair.
I just mean that matter of factly. No judgment. We just were. If you
No
think about
judgment, but you were like rolling in your shit, and I was dancing on a cloud. But
Well, I wasn't. When I just say that we were different vibrationally, we just were. Like, it wasn't even like, oh my God, you were so miserable. We just came from two very different planes of consciousness.
Yes,
And that's
yes.
also reflected in how we lived our lives, where I was from, where you're from, like how you...
no. Oh, I agree.
Yeah. No, but I actually just want to explain that to people.
Yeah.
For listeners, so they can have a good example. So they can have a clear example of when, because I think we often think that we must be fated for a person if we're so similar.
This is
We
so
think the
nice.
same way. Oh, we're such a great fit, etc.
Yeah.
Like, they read my mind, and yeah, you want a level of compatibility for sure. Otherwise, I mean, I'm not down for friction. I do not get off on that bullshit. It either has to harmonize or it doesn't.
But at the same time, their lives could look very different to yours. They could maybe be in a bit more of a messy situation and you could not, or you could be in a bit more of a messy situation and they could not. Is
Or,
basically your
yeah,
point.
but so you and I, exactly, you were in a somewhat messier situation, and I was in a bit more of a stable thing. You know, I have
Yeah.
my family, etc. But you were also not able to confront certain issues, which is what, I ended up being there for you, and then we ended up creating this work. And I was in a little bit of a situation because I was burning out some old issues. So together we figured things out, and the more time we spent together, the more our vibrations started to match.
Interesting.
So now when you're like, Liz, can you actually just read me better? Like, no, in many ways, we're just a better fit than we used to be.
Yeah, that makes sense.
Because we're not having to adjust to one another all the time.
So 5 years later.
This would not be a typical relationship necessarily that would last that long if we didn't have something to anchor it. And for us, it's the work.
So what about romantic relationships?
Well, often, and this is kind of what can't really keep happening, and I think we said this before, often what happened, and I know this isn't what you asked, but I do need to explain this. You can't make somebody fully vibrate at your level or force compatibility and use, say, like, but we have a child together and therefore that's gonna anchor us somehow, because that doesn't fix vibration. You and I just found a meeting point within, and that's the point of like within our fates, is that ever evolving relationship. We found a way to ever evolve together. Mm-hmm. But you cannot utilize another person to be able to do that.
Like a child.
Exactly.
Okay. So my question.
Yes, go ahead.
How does it work with romantic relationships? If you said that our relationship was a bit different because of the 5, we had the work to anchor us. How does it work with romantic relationships? Can you meet someone who's at a different vibration to you and make it work?
So when you're magicking vibrationally, you've got to be similar,
Okay.
if not the same.
Okay.
When you're in your fate is about growth and evolution, not about the cherry on top. So that's all about possibilities and contract. So no, in that respect, you don't have to be vibrationally the same. You just need to be able to be similar enough if you have similar goals and you want that relationship to continue.
And also, like, as simple as when you're in the same room, it flows.
Exactly.
That's
so you have
really
to
the
be
key.
able to you have to be able to harmonize. So it's not your vibration that has to work. It's the frequency at which you operate has to be able to harmonize. So if we are different enough, I mean, Ricardo and I are not, we're similar creatures in our desires, but how we go about achieving them and expressing them is very distinct. But because we share similar desires and goals, we can bring those distinctions together.
Okay.
Because where we land in that sort of common place is very enjoyable.
That's the point. The commonplace is enjoyable.
Very much. And so for us, it's not a difficult thing most of the time where I'm at one place and he's at another. So I've got a hand up, a hand down, and we have to somehow keep kind of coming together. That would be very annoying. You've got to kind of hover around a similar level.
Okay.
Because, and you think about it, and I've shared this in 20-something years of marriage, we're not always in that kind of hovering around the same level, and it. If he's somewhere that's a bit different because he's feeling challenged or vice versa, oh my God, I get so frustrated.
When you're talking about the magic, the vibrational stuff, but I thought you can't magic people. You can only magic opportunities.
Magic opportunities. Yeah. And so when you're magicking opportunities vibrationally, you've got to be very similar to make.
But otherwise, it's just you've got to just let fate do its thing.
Exactly. Fate has a sort of natural order of progression, and we've always said the more embedded in your purpose you are, the more that whole unfolding is going to happen and get you there. So it's not so much. So often with fate, sometimes the sticking question is when. When you're in your karma, we want when because we want a sense of when things are going to get better. When we're in your post-karmic reality, when you're operating from fate, when is always just a matter of like, okay, there's a timing thing here. Does that make sense?
Kind
But
of.
if we're looking for now is magic. So you're magicking the opportunity.
So how do you know if two people are vibrationally compatible for magic purposes?
They don't annoy the fuck out of you. It is very easy to feel and experience a connection. It's quite simple with magic.
And what about fate? Same?
No, fate is a little funny. Fate's the tricky one because, like you and I, it didn't always feel so great.
So
Yeah.
it could, but when we always came together, it was easy. So I guess
easy.
that's the thing. Even if it's a bit tricky when you're not together, when you're together, it's easy, and that's still fate.
Yeah, and it's mutually beneficial, but not in a superficial way.
Okay.
Yeah. Whereas with magic, remember, if magic is the cherry on top, it's the Tuscan holiday versus the backyard one. It's a little bit extra. Sometimes when you come together, you know it's magic because it's like a high.
When you put magic and fate together, so let's say you're fated to be in a relationship with someone, so it's written in both of your fates, but it's also a magical moment shared. That's like the best, I assume.
Yeah. It's a bit like when I met Ricardo. Remember, I magicked that opportunity, although I wasn't conscious that I did it.
Yeah.
And then when we came together, we didn't not, I mean, then we saw each other, but it was an awkward thing. Remember, it was a magical moment in which we met. And then we had a couple of really horrendous dates where I thought, I just don't think I need to know this person. Right. So vibrationally, where were we? He was coming at it like, I have to ask questions and I can't talk about myself. And I'm like, why isn't he talking about himself? This is very weird. And then eventually when we got over it, then we could come together. And then once we were together, it was very easy and it was very nice. When we put magic and fate together, they do form a perfect union of happiness because we're experiencing everything we wanted and that we hoped for in our fate. And that everything that we've desired through magic. I mean, imagine that. That combination is amazing. So what's interesting, and this is where I'm like, okay, you really can't always escape the whole relationship thing and the one thing, because we talk about the one being us. But how do we get to experience ourselves a lot is relationships. So of course we want relationships. And we can't, the more quote unquote spiritual we become, it's not about having fewer relationships or knowing the same type of person so they mirror our spirituality back. How fucking boring. What makes life exciting and interesting and yummy and fun is just relationships. And so when I was sort of asking, like, if you just to be able to have that connection enough with a person where your fates are overlaid, where you're close enough, and then together you can maybe magic something. And so that brings that fated relationship to a different height. Or rather than say height, because again, that's the notion of ascension, where it just gets better. You take something good and it gets better.
Let's say you're fated to just have, let's say, a sexual relationship, but the magic also then just makes it feel a little bit more magical and a little bit more yummy.
Yes. Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. And so if you have a friend, like a really close friendship, I do, and I have a friend who's very capable. She's quite magical as well. When we get together, our capacity to create, unique experiences just becomes even better. And so the amount of fun we have is just magnified, right? It's really cool. And when you are in that magic and fate life, what's really beautiful is that it will supersede all the doubts and fill in all the holes that all of your questions and wonderings can kind of create. Even though I give the visual of the fates as a tapestry, they're not static. These lines are all lit up. Everything that's woven into our fates, because we're moving, we're in constant motion, those lines are in motion. It doesn't mean that they're moving across necessarily, but they are moving us forward. So again, everything is ever evolving. Much like the post-karmic life, this is not going to be smooth sailing necessarily as we try to figure all of this out, as you can maybe attest to, because you and I, again, we've just been testing this out, and we're sort of we're the guinea pigs in some of this work, right? We have to see how does it really apply? How does it work in the real world? And since our fates are tied to others, I'm responsible to you, you're responsible to me, we have this body of work that we create together, we are in a constant adjustment period. Yeah. And that is part of, I wouldn't just say the relationship bit, or the responsibility bit, but when you do have to have these responsibilities, because magic is unforgiving, because we have purpose, etc., there's just a lot we're held accountable to.
And it's also about making space for the other person to be, right? Mm-hmm. That is how things get better and better. Because instead of falling apart or falling away, you allow yourself to hold more light, more stuff. And so things can have the opportunity to always just get better and better and better.
Yeah. And you expand as a result. Thank you for listening. For more information, articles, and inspiration, find us at karmasmybitch.com and at karmasmybitch.insta.
And if you liked what you heard, please subscribe and leave us a review.